Hello there everyone and welcome back. It's time to continue on with my ranked endeavor with the Imperial Navy, and you would think with how close I am to legendary ranking this shouldn't take very long. But it seems like my ranking didn't really increase all that much with the last series of matches that I just did, so it might still be a couple of episodes, a couple of weeks maybe. And in all seriousness, I really want to try and get 3 videos in every week, so at least that way I'm not at risk of my MMR ranking, or at least my progress, kind of backtracking a little bit, just due to the limited number of matches that I'm doing. But either way, whether I can succeed on that or not is a different story, but right now we are playing up against a mirror match of Imperial Navy, and I believe Tazos, I can't remember how the name was pronounced off the top of my head, since I don't have the nameplate here to look at, but I'm pretty certain I played against them a couple of times already. But the fleet that they're going to be utilizing is actually one of the pre-made type of fleets, which does make me question what I just said there. Since they are still higher admiral level, they have access to all the skills, so this is not really going to be a one-side fight. Otherwise, I probably would try to avoid putting those type of matches on here and just skip them on out. But they are using, what is it, 2 Grand Cruisers, the Apocalypse, and I believe it's like a Lunar or 2 Gothics for the cruisers. At least whatever pre-made fleet actually consists of that. I honestly can't remember off the top of my head. But either way, they still got a lot of firepower in the Grand Cruisers. I'm pretty certain that they're Avengers, or at least one of them is an Avenger. And with armor-piercing ammo, that is a big issue. That can do a lot of damage there if I'm complacent. Either way, we're going to get started. I did skip ahead a little bit to allow at least to speed up the downtime, because I was just mostly waiting for my opponent to ready up. And we see 5 ships. I'm wondering if they're ultimately Grand Cruisers. The number is kind of indicative of it, outside maybe an all-Avenger fleet. So I don't know what to really think here. I'm watching for speed, I'm watching for any indication of what they might be. And since they don't have any gas clouds, I'm just free to launch fighters to maybe get a little bit of vision. So maybe I can get some light damage at range. Since after all, that's kind of my bit of my biggest strength with this fleet. I'm basically as powerful as I can be at range, but if we do get in a bit of firefight, get in really close range brawl, then I'm relying almost exclusively on my torpedoes and spurs to kind of do damage, and ideally do damage really quickly. Otherwise, I'm not going to win that matchup. So good micromanagement is definitely key, but I'm watching for a speed increase. I'm almost certain that's a Grand Cruiser, judging by how quickly it's grabbing, but I also know there's a frigate there as well. So I'm mindful about being spotted, at least at a certain point, and hell, I'm trying to aim my torpedoes to maybe get a little bit of damage in. Noticing this really weird glitch where most of my torpedoes aren't even visible for the first period. So I have no idea what to make of that. And sadly my fighters get picked off. I should have recalled them immediately, since having those charges, especially if I was dealing with like Exorcists or a lot of fighter bays, that would have been really important. Either way, I'm watching for the torpedoes to connect. They are... well, I'm going to say right now, those torpedoes are a huge whiff. Not a single one of them is going to connect, and hopefully that's a good demonstration on how just the prow, keeping your... just keeping your forward facing towards the torpedoes can help a lot. Although I did try and narrow the arc a little bit to kind of attempt to crisscross them. Although it's not nearly as easy to do in Armada 2 as it is with Armada 1. Since Armada 1, if you do a move order with the ships, they will all look at the exact same point, as opposed to the formation move that you currently see when I move my 4 cruiser fleet. It made it a little bit easier to do that crisscross formation, especially if you do the move order really close to your ships, as opposed to close to the enemy fleet like I kind of did. I do fire a scanner pulse. It was a preemptive one because I thought maybe my cruisers were detected, but that was actually the gas clouds giving that away. And I don't think I actually succeeded in marking any of the cruisers. So I was hoping to get some free shots in the gas cloud, but Either way, I am forced to retreat to kind of deny these torpedoes a bit. And like I said before about flattening your ships to avoid torpedoes, that's basically what happens here. Although with the point defense and the torpedoes kind of being flying past me, it was an easy thing to do at least. I didn't really need to worry about my facing as much there. Otherwise, I didn't get to do nearly the damage I would have liked. I wanted to do enough damage to the fleet before they got to the gas cloud. Thankfully, my opponent's not taking full use of it, or I was able to mark them. Honestly, I never did bother to check if they were marked. So I'm a little bit uncertain, but their boosting keeps them from being revealed either way. And with that aggressive movement, I'm just going to slow them down, get repositioned, and I'm going to prepare for a torpedo salvo here, depending on how they move. And conveniently, they're going to make it a little bit easier for me. Since they're moving deeper into the stasis bomb, trying to avoid their damage abilities at the same time, and the disruption bomb works perfectly because the supercharged void shield sadly did absolutely nothing to my poor adversary. And these torpedoes are going to do a nice bit of damage. How much damage did we do exactly? Not a lot, maybe 400 to 600 points of damage on the Retribution, and 200 on the other two cruisers. So not the most exciting damage, but it is important at the moment to try and soften them up, especially with their shields down, so I could compound on that a little bit, and maybe get some critical hits. But as it stands now, my Apocalypse is isolated. It might get run down if my opponent really wishes to, and my one cruiser is taking a heavy beating, my Dictator even, with its lack of torpedoes and just the whole damage it took. So this is looking precarious if they can continue to hit the Dictator, but thankfully shields are up, and the Celestial Body is blocking a little bit of the shots. And with this convenient Avenger in the way, I am able to engage it solely, although I was kind of hoping my opponent would panic with that torpedo shot, but still 2 fire results is still a good result. And I have more torpedoes, although half of these cruisers are recharging a combustion gauge at the moment, so it's a little bit of an awkward situation for me. And now my opponent decides to panic when I decide to aim right at him. Too little too late, because I was kind of preparing my first torpedo salvo for that maneuver, and it sadly did not work out. But I got the full 180 points on the fire. Gonna board, try and cripple the morale as much as I can. And my Apocalypse is rushing in to rejoin the fleet, ideally for a stasis bomb, so I can do another torpedo strafing run like I did before. And thankfully, my cruiser's gonna dodge that, and I think my opponent doesn't know what heading is going on, thanks to the gas cloud kind of obscuring it a bit. Since with that high energy turn, I'm able to evade them relatively well, at least the close range boarding. I'm just thankful they didn't have a Culexus Assassin to kind of cause a mutiny on that thing immediately. But you already seen what I did before with the first stasis bomb. I'm going to be trying it again here. It's just going to be a little awkward because of the gas cloud. So my macro weaponry isn't going to do a whole lot, but thankfully, torpedoes do not care about that so much. I'm just in an awkward situation again, where my combustion gauge are kind of burnt out on most of my cruisers. But torpedo salvos are going out. Dictator had his torpedoes destroyed, and we got a full salvo on the Avenger. And the cruiser, the Lunar I believe, is about to suffer a terrible, terrible fate. Although sadly, because of the last minute boost and the high energy turn, I don't do nearly as much damage as I want. So as a consolation prize, I am going to get to ram the Retribution and eventually kill off with the mutiny and fire assaults. And with the morale status the status of the morale on the rest of the fleet from my opponent, they're rapidly losing out on their crew quickly. Although, they cancelled the mutiny on the one in the gas cloud now, and lost the deck. I was wondering why it wasn't mutinied for a moment there. But that was a nice turnaround, because if I were to be serious, I felt like maybe I was on the losing end of this battle with the amount of damage I took on both my individual cruisers. My Dictator took a lot of hits, and the one cruiser in the gas cloud took a lot of damage too, I felt like. I can't remember if it was the Dictator or not. I'm assuming it wasn't, since the torpedo attack run I did on the Avenger earlier. But the prow, the torpedoes helped turn that around quickly for me. And it's why I kind of rely on them to connect and do the damage necessary when we get in close range fight. I just don't exactly understand what my opponent's saying here. I'm fairly certain I played Tassos before, but I could be wrong. It's just the pre-made fleet that confuses me on that front. Even with that said though, I was feeling a little worried for a brief period of time until I got that second stasis bomb to connect. Then thankfully it just snowballed in my favor, with the Apocalypse able to join in. So, at the end of the day, I'm not worried, and like I said, they're level 34. With AI skirmishes, that's possible to have not really done multiplayer, so I'm not too concerned about that, outside the skills and upgrades they got. Alright, match number 2, and we're face off against Liberal Perturbaro, is it? It almost sounds like a Primarch name. I don't know if I'm thinking Iron Hands or another Loyalist chapter. But either way, I remember Liberal from Armada 1, when they were playing almost exclusively the Imperial Navy fleet, I think, with an Emperor and a couple of regular cruisers. I just can't remember if they were Dictators or Tyrants or what. But we're dealing with Necrons this time around, and what we're going to be seeing is just 2 tomb ships and a light cruiser, although, thankfully, the light cruiser is not the flagship, which I'm going in here as soon as I realize there are 2 tomb ships. I'm trying to isolate and maybe pick off the deck or engines on the light cruiser, since my lances can be pretty damn effective at doing that, since what we've seen already in my, Crew Warspear Tau match that I had in my last video. That was pretty good, and I can destroy the deck relatively quickly with the lock-on stance. But in this case, I am suspicious of maybe a Scourge type fleet, so I'm basically going brace for impact first, since by the time I'm even in firing range, I should be able to switch over to lock-on stance without too much issue, is my thought process. And I did see the light cruiser do its inertialess drive jump, so I know it's somewhere in the area. So I'm launching my fires in a bit of an awkward direction to kind of try and pick them off, since I don't think I need to reveal the tomb ships just yet. Hell, I have the Nova Cannon to kind of help in that fact too. If Liberal were to ever panic or try to minimize damage with to dodge the Nova Cannon, then they're briefly revealed and I can fire on them afterwards. So long as they don't jump in a gas cloud, which sadly the map layout does work in Liberal's favor if I were to use the Nova Cannon that way. But I do have the micro warp jump, I do have the plasma bombs, and what I'm trying to do is anticipating a mass recall jump in. So I'm spreading out my cruisers, so at least that way a good number of them ideally are able to rush down, ram, and fire torpedoes on the Necron fleet. And thankfully, due to the lack of hull fire, I do know where the light cruiser is. I just sadly don't have the lock-on stance to benefit off it, let alone I don't have the range at the moment either. I held back as I did because I thought it was the flagship, and it is not. So I can rest easy there. It's still the Kopej, which has a ridiculous amount of health for a light cruiser, and it can do a notable amount of damage over time. But at the end of the day, it makes my life so much easier, so I'm going to try and take what damage I can here. And again, if I can get a free critical hit on this light cruiser, that probably helps me longer term. Although, destroying the deck will not get rid of their stances, so there's not a lot of reason to go after that. so I'll just try and go after the engines. And sadly, my frigate's gonna get picked off a little bit here with the aggressive maneuver, and I don't even think... Okay, I remember what happens here. I'm gonna jump on top of the Kopej with my Apocalypse. There's actually a benefit to the micro-warp jump, at least vaguely. And I am getting shots in there. The Nova Cannon is on cooldown right now. And I fire torpedoes for a little bit extra damage. It's not a lot of damage, but consider we're dealing with 2 tomb ships that are probably going to jump me aggressively. Every little bit counts in the game of attrition, as it's going to be made apparent with more Necron matches, I think, or even just the Necron matches I had so far. And thankfully I'm getting good damage on this light cruiser. Its engine's gone, it can't jump away for the time being, but it did mass recall. So mass recall is a thing. I'm just thankful that it's not on the light cruiser, because otherwise this might be a very short match, whether I win or lose. But either way, I got a brief period of time where I can at least do damage to these battleships, at least until they get to the gas cloud, which is where Liberal is currently going. So I think I recalled the fighters in preparation for that, or maybe they were just being naturally recalled, I'm not sure. And then this is going to be a bit of an awkward setup for me, because I'm pretty certain Liberal still has a frigate to reveal me. Never mind the number of doom scythes that they have to kind of spot me to the fighters. So I'm going to take advantage of this brief period where I can fire torpedoes, but I do am too tight of a clump. So what you're going to see here is not only is the torpedoes going to get shot down, but the torpedoes also get hit. I just didn't realize that I actually connected with the first wave, so that may not be nearly as bad as I make it sound. Plasma Bomb also is a whiff, I think, there, but it does force their heading a little bit to where I can take advantage of them coming towards me. I just sadly don't have torpedoes available on this one cruiser, which would be really nice for this maneuver because this is going to be aggressive, and I'm going to follow it up with the rest of my fleet. And I think the idea is to kill the morale on the one tomb ship, while ideally, killing off the flagship is my strategy here. I just gotta be good about my torpedoes, because as we just seen, a jump was about to happen. Thankfully, this is the one big benefit of going in one at a time with my cruisers. I got reserves available for when they get into an awkward position like right now. And with all the resources almost completely burnt, I say that, and I was robbed a good torpedo shot. We're going to very soon kill this flagship. At what cost is the big question, because that was a very light ram damage I just did. And the other ship is kind of blocking for it some. Thankfully, this is why I love the Nova Cannon in certain situations like this. Pay no attention to the fact that I'm going to hurt my own cruiser, because it helped kill the flagship, and we forced the mutiny, I think, on the tomb ship, the second one, and that permanently, at least temporarily, turns off his torpedo salvo, or its star pulse generator. Now it's just a question if I could take advantage of it before it regenerates, because I don't think that stops the cooldown at all. And it is a bit of an awkward situation right now, but thankfully I'm still able to shoot at something. The light cruiser is about to lose his crew, and if not just die altogether. And I'm in still pretty good shape, thankfully. So I believe it's safe to say I can consider this a victory for me. It's just a matter of killing this thing off before it does too much more damage. And I can... You can just imagine how much of a different story this might be if I didn't have the discipline to fire these ships' torpedoes off one at a time, or even their abilities one at a time. And Liberal does say they're rusty. It may have been a little bit of time since they last played, but I still remember them from Armada 1. There were some interesting matches, different matches in Armada 1, because again, it was an Emperor with a couple of cruisers, which I don't even think was the norm for Imperial Navy. I think it was mostly the Retribution Overlords, if not just a bunch of Overlords with a handful of Tyrants maybe. It feels like forever, I honestly couldn't remember. Alright, time for another match against Necron, although this is a completely different opponent, and they are going to be using a more traditional type of fleet setup that we're used to. It's not the Scourge fleet, but they are going to be going to Tomb Ship and double battle cruisers with the Particle Whip. I just honestly can't remember if it's the one with the 4 Particle Whips or just the 2. That I'm not certain on, but they do have that mindset on their fleet at least. And with that said, my mindset's very much the same as before. I am wary of the Scourges because they can do a lot of damage if I'm not, at the very least, prepared for them. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of ways for this fleet to actually deal with the Doom Scythes and the Scourges. Simply put, I can use my Dictator's fighters to kind of draw them away to stop doing damage to my ships. And I can fire my torpedoes one at a time to kind of draw them away as well. It's the one big downside of the Orc fighters and the Necron fighters when you want them to really do damage for your fleet. And there's the indication right there of the battle cruisers. So I already know what I'm up against here. Of course, they almost look exactly like the regular cruisers, so it's impossible to really know if I'm dealing with particle whips just yet. But that's my mindset going into here right now. Expecting a very top-heavy type of fleet that is going to try and do damage straight through my shields. I don't know how aggressive they want to be, because I honestly believe that Necron in general should not be the aggressors, just because of how powerful that inertialist drive could be at just keeping your ships alive at a distance. Never mind that they're perfect accuracy with their lightning arcs too. So you don't even need to be in close because you're getting really no value outside of your skill abilities when you get in close like that. I want to make that argument at least. Either way, fighters, I'm watching this to see if I need to recall them, but thankfully, with it only being a single squadron, it is going to get picked off. So it's going to go unhindered to reveal the Tomb Ship for me. And I have this other frigate at the ready to maybe reveal the 2 ships, at least the 2 battle cruisers. Although I am waiting for my lock-on stance to be available before I can do any real damage. And even then, I think my frigate may be too far away to provide adequate, or at least give it adequate support for what's going to happen here. Since as soon as I do my scanner pulse with the frigate on the left, he's basically going to jump right on top of that frigate and try and pick it off, blindly at that. Which could have been a huge liability for them if I had been a little more patient with my scanner pulse. But also with that said, this shot's mainly to force the inertialist drive. That was the main idea, so maybe I could follow it up with some torpedoes, but they decided to regroup with the rest of their fleet instead. So I'm not going to get that window, and even though the game bugged out where I don't see the silhouettes, I thankfully get an indication of how close they are. And now that the scanner pulse has happened, I am going to get these shot down, even with the hold fire. My opponent does blindly jump in there to try and kill them off, or kill off this frigate. Which is why a little bit more patience could have been really good for me, especially with this Tomb Ship just hiding in the gas cloud right now. I'm going to prepare my engagement. I am paying a little bit of mind to the possibility there might be a mass recall, so I still want to try and commit to a long-range engagement if I can help it. And I'm using the fighters to try and reveal this thing if it ever gets out of the asteroid belt, since it should eventually. Otherwise these torpedoes are going to hurt. Sadly, torpedoes are burnt out, but I do get my shots like I want. I'm just sadly burning, I burnt multiple torpedo shots, which again probably were not spread as much as they could have, to make sure at least one of them connected from the Star Pulse generator. But it's good damage there. My opponent's currently in reload stance, so they're not regenerating their health very quickly yet. But I'm very wary of an aggressive dive on me. And I'm trying to move this frigate to also spot the ships for me, or at least make preparations for it. Because right now, I am a little bit vulnerable, and we are going to see the particle whips pretty soon too. I don't think that was with the ricochet, I forget what the dang upgrade's called for the particle whip, but we are, at least that confirms that one of them is the battle cruiser with the 4 particle whips, at least. We just seen it right there. And I do have them scanner pulsed. They are jumping aggressively, so I gotta be mindful of that. So now I gotta try and do as much damage as possible, but with them in my stern, that is tricky to do. So I'm gonna take advantage of the micro warp jump here. It's actually surprisingly convenient. It takes a little bit of planning, or at least forward planning, to get it to work though. And with this deck permanently destroyed, I am gonna capitalize on this. Especially with the jump maneuver they just did too with that battle cruiser. So this thing is going to get nuked really quickly, making sure again to fire my abilities one at a time, in case of a random jump, or even a mass recall if that's available. Now one more torpedo salvo for good measure, and this battle cruiser is pretty much dead. 1/3 of their fleet's basically gone, but already the damage is starting to ramp up really quickly here. I'm in a bit of a panic to try and maximize and optimize my damage. Although thankfully, my opponent gives me a little bit of breathing room there, since now I can just fly right past them with the Apocalypse. And sadly, the torpedoes get destroyed the last possible second there on the crippled cruiser. That would have been such a nice boon if I could have got that hit in. With this said, my second attack run's going to come on in, and I am down to only 1 torpedo salvo for most of my cruisers now. Thankfully, engines are permanently gone again, so I am able to follow up on this. It's just a matter of how much damage I can actually get on this battle cruiser, because those torpedoes sadly are a whiff because of the ramming turning it conveniently. And I missed the ram completely with this cruiser. Thankfully, that's convenient for me, because now I can go straight after the battleship. The tide's turning really quickly, although sadly my torpedoes did not fire like I wanted there. That battleship could have died right there, but either it didn't register my connection or I had a different ship selected, I couldn't tell ya. But I need to kill this thing now, because right now, that ability, the Scarab Swarm, is doing so much damage and regenerating health. So I needed to kamikaze to kill that thing. And thankfully, the tables are turning really quickly, and my opponent immediately concedes as a result of that. But I won't lie, that felt really trepidatious. With the amount of damage I was taking, it was looking grim if I didn't get those kills quickly and efficiently. And thankfully, it did work out for me. Work out pretty well. I just gotta have better crisis management in those kind of situations though.